Hello, and welcome to Mindset Mondays with DTK. I'm David Taylor Klaus, and this is episode number 189 in my ongoing series of live broadcasts designed for folks who get that their real work is getting better at being who they be, who they are at their core, and that's how we get better at doing what we do. So if you'll take just a moment, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, um, YouTube, or Clubhouse, or Twitter, because I'm streaming live to all these platforms, go ahead and click share and share this video with your colleagues, your friends, your community. The more voices we have in the conversation, the richer it is. Whew. So just to make sure I can hear you, would love to have you let me know where you're connecting in from today. It's a great way to let me know you're here and from where. Well, today's a nice light way to start off fourth quarter. Um, Concept today is that four simple words can completely change a life. It's a guy named Kevin Breel. I encountered him first back in May of 2013. He did a TEDx talk called Confessions of a Depressed Comic. And that talk gutted me. It was incredibly powerful. His willingness to say what seemed like four simple words. And here they are. It's I suffer from depression. And he talks about how that completely changed his life. And in declaring that, he was able to pull himself out of the shadows and be open with the people in his world about what was going on in his world. Speaking those words out loud and delivering an incredibly powerful TED Talk at age 19 was incredibly courageous. Kevin's talk helped him be more public with his battle with depression, and it allowed me to be even more public than I already had been. I'd been living with depression, and I have been since as long as I can remember. Now, most of that time I spent thinking that it was my fault, that it was my responsibility to fix it, that sharing it would be a burden to others, that I had to do all of this on my own. And that's such a common experience for folks who battle with depression. They don't want to burden other people with it. They don't want to admit that they feel broken. They don't want to reach out to get the help that will allow them, enable them to move forward. Problem is, each of those fallacies are completely false. Obviously, fallacies. The combination of the four is almost deadly, and it was for me. Almost, that is. So Tuesday this week, as soon as I woke up, I could feel that the depression was creeping in again. Um, and it's interesting because I felt the signs for a while, but I started to feel that seep in a way that I felt like I was moving through quicksand. It was all I could do to keep going. I plowed through the structures that I set up in my world. Meditation, time on the Peloton, breakfast, going through my calendar of events, leaning into what was scheduled for me, walking through meals, all the things that I keep on the schedule that help me keep rolling. And it was just one foot in front of the other. Sometimes plugging along is enough. Sometimes showing up is enough. Sometimes just getting out of bed is enough. And enough is courageous. And that's what the quote to play with today is. This is from Marianne Radmacher. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Courage comes in all shapes and forms. And whether you live with a chronic health issue, mental or physical, or not, There's a lesson to draw from this. Set your bar where you can, based on where you are every day in each moment, always. It's one of the four agreements, and I keep them printed out on my desk because the reminder for me is the fourth agreement. Always do your best. And what's powerful about Don Miguel Ruiz, the words that he brought us in the four agreements is doing your best is absolutely unequivocally situational in each and every moment. Your best right now may be different than your best yesterday or tomorrow or in an hour. The only comparison is, are you doing your best in comparison right now to what your best you're capable of in that moment? Only you can know what you're capable of. Only you can measure yourself against that mark. And most importantly, get out of your head. Advocate for what you need where you are and do it out loud. Those of us who navigate depression, who live with depression, who suffer from depression, being in our head is the worst place we can be because it's an echo chamber that's filled with the negative narratives that run through our head, left untended. It's important to get out of your head. Listen, for those of you who don't know what depression is, Kevin gave a great explanation. He said, there's a popular misconception that depression is just being sad when something in your life goes wrong. But that's just sadness. That's a natural thing. That's a natural human emotion. Real depression isn't being sad when something in your life goes wrong. Real depression is being sad when everything in your life is going right. It's the best definition I've ever heard outside of clinical. Real depression is being sad when everything in your life is going right. And that doesn't necessarily compute if you don't suffer from depression or if you're not close to someone who does. But that's what it is. Things can be spectacular. And I don't mean just on Facebook, but everything in your life can actually be going well, going right, and it's still slogging through quicksand. So if you have someone in your life living with depression, here's a quote from Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry is a very well-known British comedian, part of the comic duo Fry and Laurie. Hal Laurie is the guy who played um, not Bones, the other medical show, House. Anyway, Stephen Fry uh, wrote this specifically for people who have someone in their life living with depression. Try to understand the blackness, lethargy, hopelessness, and loneliness they're going through. Be there for them when they come through the other side. It's hard to be a friend to someone who's depressed, but it's one of the kindest, noblest, and best things you will ever do. It's hard to be a friend to someone who's depressed, but it is one of the kindest, noblest, and best things you will ever do. I'll post these two quotes in the notes underneath these for each of these live broadcasts, so they're there for you. And for those of you like me, live with and battle depression, listen to the words of our modern sage, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I found that with depression, one of the most important things one of the important things you could realize is that you're not alone. And that's an important piece. Courage is a lot easier to muster when you realize you are not alone, and you're not. Courage doesn't always roar. Remember, sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. So, regardless of what you're navigating this fine October morning or afternoon, if you're in Europe, take Sam Levinson's words to heart. Don't watch the clock. Do what it does. Keep going. So, this is the question today. What is enough for you right now? What is your enough today? David and Cameron, it's good. I'm glad you guys are both here for this. Um, Cameron, I didn't realize you were in Salt Lake. Tessie, thank you. Tessie says, I'll try again tomorrow. Thank you for sharing your journey. You're inspiring me. Understand the darkness and be a friend. And that is so much the key. I love Stephen Fry's comment. It's hard to be a friend to someone who's depressed, but it's one of the kindest, noblest, and best things you will ever do. I'll also post some of the links to Kevin's talk. It's a Confessions of a Depressed Comic. Getting out of your head can be helped by this insightful definition of rumination. Oh, rumination is round and round thinking that doesn't lead to action, even the smallest action. If you find yourself ruminating, recognize it and take a thought that will lead to action. Cameron, that's so true. The rumination, perseveration, when you've got your mind caught in a loop around the axle, choosing any thought that can move you, period. Move you forward, move you out, move you in a different direction than around and around and around. That is an incredibly useful piece to bring in. Thank you, Cameron. Because that's what I mean by one of the things that happens when you get stuck in your head, in that echo chamber. There's no new thought that comes in. The patterns are well-worn neural pathways. Breaking those patterns by speaking out loud, by being in relationship with the people in your community, by speaking out loud. And whether for you it's saying I suffered from depression, or whether it's just saying I need support, whatever it is, as we start in the Northern Hemisphere, moving towards the time where the days get shorter, the nights get longer, and the holiday season, yes, I know it's a month and a half away, but it's coming. And for some folks, that's a very dark, complicated time. Be a friend to the folks around you that are navigating depression. It is an incredibly noble thing to do. So my intention was not to bring everybody down on Monday. The intention is to share what's going on in my world and the world around me and the world other people around you are living in right now. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I know that I'm not alone. And that's one of the ways that I get out of the rumination. It's one of the ways I get out of the perseveration. It's one of the ways I get out from twisted around the axle. And it's a critical life-saving thing to remember for folk that are suffering from depression. So don't let them be alone. And don't let them think they are. So between now and next week, let the folks in your world know that they're not alone. See you next week.